So yeah, let's talk about Nintendo stock. It hit an all-time high today. Of Sorry, let me just get the actual number. $20.88. It is up over 40% on the year. The pre-order demand has been through the roof for the Nintendo Switch 2. Most retail websites were busted last week when the pre-orders went live in America. But it seems like demand everywhere is good. They had 2.2 million people register their interest for a Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order in Japan. For a frame of reference, the Switch 1 at launch sold 330,000 units in Japan. So we're talking about like 7 times the demand from the first Switch to the second Switch in Japan. That's wild. And we don't know what the demand is globally. We do know that they've sold out everywhere. Retailers are planning on selling some Switches physically, like in their stores on launch day. So if you didn't get a pre-order, you could go to like a Costco or maybe a GameStop or a Walmart or a Best Buy or a Target. I wouldn't go to Target, but wherever sells gaming to maybe get that. Look at Kirby here. Just look at him for a second. Saved the world. But yeah, so I guess the question I am getting asked a lot, and like you may wonder, like, why the hell should you care what I think? Right? Why should you care what I think about Nintendo stock? Well, I own Nintendo at $3.89 in my retirement account, and it's currently at $20. That's probably one reason. I've been researching this company intensely for probably the last 20 years of my professional career. Basically, ever since I got into investing, I was looking for deals, and I started buying Nintendo stock like ahead of the launch of the Wii U and the 3DS. And then I held it throughout the entirety of that time period. My thesis was that the IP was being undervalued, and I was right. So now here we are, years later, and the stock is finally breaking out. So what next is the question, right? I think that's what people want to know. Like, what should you do next with Nintendo stock? Or should you buy it, right? Like, should you buy Nintendo stock? If I didn't own it, would I buy it today? The answer is yes. But I'm going to say something to kind of couch my statement, kind of put a qualifier on this statement. The global economy is in a terrible place right now. Like, Nintendo's timing is god awful. The Nintendo Direct occurred the morning before Trump announced the tariffs. Like, so they were shooting from the hip when they decided to price it at $450. And if the tariffs in Vietnam stayed at 54% and were not brought back down to 10%, the Switch 2 would have definitely seen a price increase in America. It didn't, because Glorious Leader put a pause on it for 90 days or whatever. The problem here is it was just a pause, right? So like it's a possibility, it's a risk, it's a legitimate risk that Trump rolls back his rollback of the tariffs and increases them again. So if he increases the tariffs to 54% in Vietnam, all bets are off on how far Nintendo stock will fall, because they are in the center of this. They make Switch 2 in China and in Vietnam, and they're diverting their China allocation to Europe and to Japan, maybe Australia a little bit, like 4 people in Australia who will get their Switch 2s. But they are trying to ramp up production in 2 geographies simultaneously. One in Japan, one to facilitate the demand in Japan and Europe, and the other to facilitate the demand here in America. It's like they want to get as many Switches as they can produced and shipped to America while the tariffs are at 10%, right? And they know that demand is there. So my answer is this. Should you buy Nintendo stock? Maybe not. Here. Maybe not. Like it's run a ton. It's up a lot on the year. And it is a company that is going to be affected if the trade war escalates. I want to make that risk abundantly clear to people. If you think this is a trade, it's not a trade. So you want to take advantage of those pessimistic times, right? When you have the panic of the past month, there was honestly a good opportunity to buy Nintendo stock at around $16, $17 just like 2 weeks ago. And now it's above 20. It's almost near $21 a share. So my answer is twofold. It really depends on your time horizon and also your risk tolerance. I think in the long run, and that means 5 to 10 years from now, hopefully long after Donald Trump is gone, hopefully, that the stock is going to head towards $40 a share. When they fully realize the cinematic universe that they have, when they fully realize their merch, their trading cards, their the amusement parks, right? Like all of these efforts that they've put in place. Maybe they finally make a mobile game that actually does well, or a mobile app that does well. But at the very least, like we know we're getting a Mario movie next year. We know we're getting a Zelda movie in 2027. Those are two catalysts there. We know that there's more games coming, right? But the question is, and I think this was my fear going into this generation. I've kind of come to grips with it. This is not a Wii U, right? It's going to outsell the Wii U's first year in the first day. So it's not a Wii U. I think what they've done with the continuity of your purchases on the eShop from Switch to Switch 2, what they're doing with Game Share is good. The upgrading of games is good. Obviously, some people are mad that you have to pay a little bit more for better frame rates. I'm okay with that. I think if you already own Tears of the Kingdom, the $10 is not going to kill you. So I think that a lot of what they're doing, just from a continuity standpoint, this is the first time that they're doing that. So I think there will be a one-time benefit of that. Kind of like last generation, where Nintendo had that one-time benefit of combining their handheld devs with their console devs, right? So instead of having a Mario 3D Land and a Mario 3D World in simultaneous development for 3DS and for Wii U, they just had Mario Odyssey. And we saw how much of a banger that was. And then we got Bowser's Fury down the road. So it's like, that was a one-time generational benefit. And you're not gonna get that again this generation. So I think what they're getting this time is the continuity of the Nintendo account. And there's like 200 some million Nintendo accounts out there, and there was 150 million people who bought a Switch. So I think creating continuity for your user base in like an iTunes-like way, it creates that halo for Nintendo products. So I guess what I'm saying is this might not be the Switch when it comes to how successful it is. That's entirely possible. Because the uniqueness of the Nintendo Switch, it's not there anymore. Like, there are other handheld gaming devices in that form factor. So I think it's going to be more like 3DS. Where like DS was wildly successful, still their number one selling device at Nintendo in the history of the company. 3DS came along, it sold half as many, but 75 million units of the 3DS is nothing to scoff at, and the software did well on the platform as well. So it's like, I foresee something similar happening here, where Switch 2 costs more than the Switch 1, so that's going to shrink demand a little bit. The games cost more than Switch 1, that's going to affect demand more. So it's like, but the average selling price of the Switch 2 is higher, and they're coming off of a very low bar. Like, people need to remember that last year was year 8, basically, of Nintendo Switch. And they didn't sell many. They didn't hit their internal targets or any of that. So they have a very, very low bar to clear. Like, their year-over-year comps are very favorable. So So if the world doesn't end in the next year, it stands to reason that Nintendo's going to have internally a tailwind. Externally, the world is a headwind. The world economy is a headwind to Nintendo. So I guess my answer is this. If you can stomach short-term volatility, like if you can handle the ups and downs of this market, if you made it through the last month of this market and you didn't sell, you shouldn't sell. If you can hold on to the stock for 10 years, and you should take advantage of the dips, these panic dips, take advantage of them to add to your position. So my answer is no. You shouldn't be selling it here, if you're okay with the risks I laid out. But there are legitimate risks that you need to factor in here that are not controllable by Nintendo. It's not unlike when the Fukushima disaster happened ahead of the launch of the 3DS, right? And I know I'm comparing Donald Trump to a nuclear disaster, but the shoe fits. So yeah, I guess that's my answer, is that it depends on your risk tolerance. It depends how long you're willing to... Risk tolerance and time horizon will affect if you should buy or sell Nintendo here. So for the most part, I'm going to hold on to it. I have it in every account that I manage, and each account that I have has different amounts of cash on hand. So the largest account that I manage has like around 15 to 20% of the portfolio is sitting in cash right now. And this brings me to another issue that I have right now. I mentioned it earlier in the show when I was looking at the Treasury chart. The effect of this trade war is that people are not going to respect American assets anymore. They don't trust the American government, and they're not going to respect some of these asset prices. So the value of the dollar, if the dollar is no longer the reserve currency of the world, it's going to go down in value. So normally in a recession, the dollar is a safe haven. I don't know if that's going to be true this time. And normally in a recession, U.S. Treasuries are a safe haven. But if let's say if Japan, China, Korea, Russia, if they all start, or Saudi Arabia, if they all start dumping their treasuries in unison, there's nothing that... It's going to get very ugly very quickly. And that's what happened. Like, a lot of people want to know, like, well, why did Trump walk back some of his tariff talk? Because the treasury market was collapsing. That's what happened. We don't know who was selling, but we know the selling was there. And we know it could easily return. And it's what's really scary. And this is very U.S. centric. The United States economy is in such a bad place because the Federal Reserve was tightening monetary policy before all this happened, because they were trying to get inflation under control. And now Trump's throwing gasoline on the inflation fire. And it's a self-inflicted recession in an inflationary environment. The Federal Reserve is not going to be able to cut rates because inflation is going to get out of control if they do. So they're not going to be accommodative. Yeah. So I think it's there's like it's funny, like Nintendo might be a safe haven asset, I guess is what I'm getting at. That's the conclusion I've reached for now, is that I think Nintendo's management is more sober than the president of the United States. I would rather trust the full faith and credit of Nintendo than the full faith and credit of the United States government right now. So as someone who does have cash on hand in some of my accounts, other accounts I don't. I'm like fully invested because I don't trust the dollar and I don't trust the treasury. And when you don't trust those two things, that's really scary. Like what that means for the future is kind of terrifying. And like the thing that I'm trying to come to grips with is if the US economy is going to suffer, and it's about, I think US and EU are like 80% of revenue for Nintendo. If demand is not there for this thing, or if, it dries up by the end of the year, it could provide huge problems for Nintendo. Because $450 is not cheap. It's not like insanely expensive when you look at gaming devices these days, but like it's a one-time purchase that people may not be able to afford this year. So I'd say like the biggest risk to Nintendo is the US economy and how the US tariff policy will affect Nintendo's supply chain specifically. But in the meantime, I think it's been a boon for them over in Japan, because like it's this patriotic duty now to support Nintendo, this great Japanese company. We support you. We're going to buy this thing. It almost like thumbing their nose at America, because the SKU in Japan is cheaper. So Japanese citizens are getting the Switch 2 for materially less than it costs to buy it here, or anywhere else on Earth. So I think there's an element of that going on too. But forget the economics of the thing. I tried out Switch 2 since the last episode of Game Trader. I actually, 2 days after the last Game Trader, I went to New York City and I got my hands on the device. It's awesome. It's flat out awesome. It's 4K 60 FPS Nintendo games. That's awesome. Like, it's, oh, did you not play Tears of the Kingdom last generation? Well, guess what? It's 4K 60 now. You have no excuse. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time for people who like Nintendo games, because we're getting Mario Kart. The menus were very similar, Scanner. Like the OS is very similar. They actually did a Switch update last night that added Game Share and the virtual game card to the UI at the bottom. So we got a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like. But the home screen looks identical, man. They didn't add folders. The menus did not seem very different. Yeah, no, I know. I think the guide traffic that you're going to be able to find with Switch 2 is like how to lend someone a virtual game card, how to do game sharing. It's cool to see Game Share come back, because that's like a DS era feature where like one person can have the game, but if you're all around each other, you can do this like local ad hoc network. I think that stuff's really cool. Yeah. But I also got to play, I played Mario Kart World, I played Donkey Kong Bonanza, and I'm excited by both of those games. Obviously the price of World has shocked people, but if you buy the bundle, it's kind of not that big of a deal. You're paying $50 for an $80 game. Like the Switch Kart bundle, that needs to be forever. That can't be a limited time thing. Like, that's the no-brainer purchase of this era. I did buy the camera. I got a couple of Pro controllers coming too. I'm very excited for Mario Kart World, but I'm also really excited for Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think that game it just looks fun as hell and unique. And I love that Donkey Kong is getting some love, because it's always Mario, 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 and now we're getting Donkey Kong. Also, like, destructible environments, that's just my vibe. I am ordering my dinner before my place closes. This is a long episode. 3-hour stream here. God damn. I'm gonna have to ask for a raise. I'm gonna get 100% raise. 0 to 0. But anyway, yeah, Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Cyberpunk 2077 actually runs. I saw the CD Projekt Red put up, I think they were talking to was it Eurogamer? I think it was Eurogamer. That they said, the best way to play Cyberpunk in handheld is the Switch 2. They're not pleased with how Cyberpunk runs on the Steam Deck. So that's interesting, because I don't necessarily think the Steam Deck is weaker than the Switch 2. Look, Lucci, I'm going to give people credit for whatever story, they wrote. I don't want to steal people's content. But, yeah, like, that I think is interesting to hear. Third parties, like the games that I played, I tried out Street Fighter 6 on a Switch 2. It ran great. Hades 2 was running on a Switch 2. It ran well. I did get to play Metroid Prime 4. We're not talking about this as much lately, but that the mouse gameplay on the Switch 2, I think is going to be like actually good. And I will say this, there was a leak of a menu screen scanner where it showed that you could use a keyboard with the Switch 2. So if the Switch 2 allows for keyboard and mouse gameplay, that might be really cool for first-person shooters, like, on the couch. Or, like, on a... You know what I mean? I think that's an interesting tidbit that we saw that came out recently, that keyboard and mouse gameplay may be a thing. It also might just be good for accessibility in general on the Nintendo Switch 2. But excited to try out more mouse gameplay. I did do, like, it was, like, left hand, I was just using, like, a regular analog and the trigger. But then on the right hand, I was using the mouse style in Metroid Prime 4. And I was playing at 1080p, 120 frames per second. And I looked up at the person at my demo, and I was like, can we get an F-Zero like this? Not with the mouse, but, like, 120 FPS F-Zero? Like, injected into my eyeballs? That would be great. So yeah, the hardware itself I thought was impressive. And the concern I have, and this is something Miyamoto kind of laid out, is that it's going to take longer to make games. And I don't doubt that at all. I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge for them, because this is the first time they're making 4K games. And I know they're not necessarily making 4K assets for this. It's likely a lot of DLSS stuff going on, but their implementation of DLSS is pretty awesome. If they're using an 8nm processor and are able to generate these kinds of results, that's that Nintendo magic that they do with their art, right? I ordered it like everyone else, Lucci. I don't know if I'm going to have a review unit of this thing. I can tell you right now, I don't. I have not signed any embargo. I can tell you that I don't have a review unit for Switch 2 as of April 30th. I would love to review the thing, but I don't think they need reviews. The thing's out. The thing is sold out everywhere. So I kind of treated that preview event like it was the review. So I did the best I could to provide as much content as possible. We got a lot of gameplay up, just over the shoulder stuff. And then, obviously my hands-on previews for several games, as well as the system itself. But, yeah, I do intend to review it. There's no special Asif way of getting the Switch 2, man. I just brute forced the Walmart website and the Best Buy website. So I was able to secure 2 Switch 2s. The orders have not been canceled yet. So we'll see what happens on that front. But pretty exciting. It's just exciting, man, when there's a new system. So there's going to definitely be hype around the launch. And that might give people an opportunity to take some gains. Like, I'm going to... Yeah, I definitely... Yeah. Lucy, Nintendo doesn't care how much money I've made off of their stock. I can tell you that right now. It didn't get me an interview with Doug Bowser. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, it probably should. You can find this really horribly lit video. I was actually sitting in this very place in the fall of 2016. I think I was facing that way. But I shot a very poorly lit video where I explained my long thesis for Nintendo ahead of the Switch 2 launch. Ahead of the Switch 1 launch. And yeah, basically everything I said that would happen has happened. And if you listen to me, you made a tremendous amount of money, at least percent-wise. And yeah, now it's... I guess my point is, I'll put it kind of simply. I think that the stock has upside of $40 per share, but that could take 5 to 10 years. And in the near term, I think it has downside to like 15, or if things get really ugly, maybe even 10. At that point, I would probably buy shares. Like, that would be an opportunity to buy. But my point is, there's a lot of hype in this stock right now. And it might be a buy the rumor, sell the news event, or it could just be a liquidity event in general, because once the public starts to hear about the Switch 2 being out, all the jaboofers run into the stock at the wrong time, and they're buying it up into the mid-20s or something. I guess my point is, if I think it's going to 40, the risk-reward is way more compelling when it's 15 than when it's 25. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's at 25 and I think there's downside, like worst case downside is 10, that's $15 of downside and $15 of upside. Whereas when you're buying it at 15, that's $25 of upside, $5 of downside. That's how I view risk reward in any investment I make. I'm like, what is the potential downside? What is the potential upside? Is it worth it? And how long is that going to take? And I just think at this point, I'm actually surprised that the stock is where it is. Because, like, things are not going well in the economy broadly. And it's like, it might be a very unique case where, like, Nintendo trades on its own merits. And sometimes that's to its detriment. I think in this time, it's like the cycle is here. But at the same time, they showed us in the last generation that maybe Nintendo is not a product cycle company anymore. Maybe they're going to become a recurring revenue story. And when that happened at Apple, we saw Apple go from a 10 PE ratio to a 35 PE ratio. If that happens here at Nintendo, I might be wrong about my $40 target. It might go higher. But that's going to take time. It took Apple like 5 years for the services revenue to become the story there. In the case of Nintendo, it's the mobile IP income. It's the merch. It's the amusement parks. It's the movies, right? So it's like, when do those things become bigger than the games, or at least sit side by side with the games? Because right now, hardware and software are still their number one. That's where they make their money. So it's a longer term story. If you have the patience, I think Nintendo is still a good investment. If you're worried and you're up late at night because of tariff fears, maybe you should lighten up. Maybe you should lighten up on your holdings. That would be my advice. So I feel bad that I don't have a definitive answer, but I think it's a nuanced answer that takes into account everything going on.